Ruth and I have agreed that we really need to keep it short tonight. We have a lot of folks here and a great presentation, and we don't want to kind of stall that any longer than we have to. Quick introduction, my name is Matt Greenwell. I'm the head of the department here at UTC, and my colleague Ruth, who is the director and curator of the gallery. My job here is really to welcome all of you tonight to this event. And to say personally how grateful I am for all of you guys coming together. There was a wonderful professionalism seminar earlier today, and OK Mountain made a point of recognizing the fact that they could have easily phoned it in, sent one or two of their guys, wrote some stuff, and it would have been a great show. But that's not the way they work. They're all in or they're not in at all, and that means a lot to me personally. It echoes the philosophy of the department. It echoes the ethos of our students, we hope, and that's why we're here. So thank you guys for being here, and thanks for saying that. As you know, this is a part of our ongoing program, the Diane Merrick Visiting Artist Series. This is a privately funded program that allows us to do extraordinary things in support of the gallery, in support of the department, and in support of this community. I hope and I feel like, as does Ruth, that what we're able to do here is a pretty amazing complement to all of the other fabulous things that are happening here in the city surrounding the arts. And we're proud to be a part of that, and we're so completely grateful for the Merrick family for their generous support of this program. None of this happens without the magical life of Ruth Grover, where she kind of like gets into cabs with strange people, and then they end up here in a couple of years, and then they know somebody who was on a plane with somebody else, and then they're here magically in a couple of years. That's just the magic of Ruth. It's a little bit magic, but it's also she makes her own magic. You know, we've had a fair amount of visiting artist events here connected with the Merrick series. They've all been pretty spectacular. This is by far the most sort of spectacular in terms of the work, in terms of the energy, in terms of just the sheer amount. The OK Mountain gang here up from Texas. I'm going to turn it over to Ruth now, who I said earlier is the director and curator for the gallery. She's going to give some brief remarks, and then we're going to dive right in. Thank you for being here. We look forward to having you tonight. I hope you enjoy the show.
And lining the stage here behind the podium are OK Mountain. And if I could really introduce you very quickly, Sterling Allen, Justin Goldwater. Sterling Allen, Austin, Texas. Justin Goldwater, Los Angeles, California. Nathan Green, Austin, Texas. Ryan Hennessy, Austin, Texas. Josh Rios, yes, Chicago, Illinois. Pete Duggins from Austin, Texas. Michael Sieben from Austin, Texas. And Carlos Rosales Silva from Austin, Texas. And I can tell you it's been great to work with them. Nathan and Carlos arrived last Friday after driving the exhibition cross-country from Los Angeles. And the other members have come in over the weekend. They installed the exhibition over the weekend. We've had some enormously enjoyable events this week. Professionalism panel today, process and materials after that. Last night we introduced OK Mountain. They talked about their own individual work to the students. It's been enormous. I keep saying awesome all the time because, you know, and it's not like I just went to the dentist, oh, awesome. It's really been an extraordinary experience to work with this fine group of artists. And, you know, and it's extraordinary to be able to bring this to our students, to have these events for our students, and extraordinary to share it with the community. And you know, the Diane Merrick series and the support of the Merrick family for this series is just a beautiful and magical thing. So, without any more words, Sterling, OK Mountain, thank you.
So first, just on behalf of everybody, I want to thank Matt, Ruth, the Merricks, and all of you guys for being here, especially those of you that have endured our first 2 or 3 lectures and probably heard us talk more in the past few days than we've listened to ourselves talk for a while. So thanks for being patient, sitting through it, and humoring us. What I want to do is just keep this open for everybody. Somebody has to control the computer, but we really work best when everyone's contributing. So you'll hear voices if you can't see faces, and we're just going to run through some work and then show you a little bit about how we collaborate, and then kind of where we come from, and then we'll try and get in and out of here. So if you guys have questions, and then we can go see the stuff and eat and all that business. So our collaborative was formed out of a venture called OK Mountain, which was a gallery. And that was formed from 2 other galleries, one called Camp Fig, which you see pictured here from 2000. It was started by Michael Sieben in 2002, and another gallery run by Pete Duggins called the Fresh Up Club that was started in 2003. And both of these artists run spaces in Austin and kind of really tireless, and something that Austin didn't have before they came along, which was bringing in work from outside of the city that we didn't have access to, and showing artists that Michael wanted to see and Pete wanted to see from all across the nation that artists in Austin weren't getting a chance to see. And so through meeting up with these guys at Camp Fig and sort of coming into the fold there, we had crossover with the Fresh Up Club as well. This is an image of the Fresh Up Club interior. We decided we wanted to do something different, something new and bigger. Our Camp Fig space was 250 square feet. We had hesitated to invite certain artists down because we didn't have the resources in the space to house an exhibition by them, and so we knew it was time to do something more involved. So we rented triple the amount of space, triple the amount of money, and rebuilt the gallery out of this old professor's studio. So this is images in, I guess this is probably early 2006, where we're doing the backyard, sheetrocking the gallery, building walls, and this is images of, that's our landlord, Mel Ziegler, who's head of the art department at Vanderbilt. He used to be at UT. He was really helpful in opening that space up for us and allowing us to kind of giving us a chance. But this experience, go ahead.
I just want to say that this is the first time that we've also started to work together. For the most part, the Fresh Up Club was sort of a thing that Pete was doing with a friend. The Camp Fig thing, there was 7 or 8 people running it, but they were all sort of little teams that would just do their thing and then sit out the next 2 shows and then do their thing and sit out the next 2 shows. So beginning with building the gallery, I think that's when we started this sort of community building, getting to know each other and socializing together.
Like you might come to a Camp Fig opening and that your buddy curated and not know who the artists were, what the show was. You just went down, you drank some beer, said hello, and then you went home.
After we started these, also, there's a gentleman here, Arturo Palacios, and he's started a gallery after we started our gallery, so it sort of generated some other things too to happen.
Yeah, I feel like the stuff that's still in Austin is still reeling off the energy from Camp Fig and the Fresh Up Club. Austin really goes in waves in terms of art activity, and it can be sleepy at times and it can be buzzing at times. And we opened OK Mountain in April of '06 when the Blanton Museum at UT had been reopened, and a few other galleries opened. It was like a really high time for Austin art, and so we sort of coincided with that.
And I'd say that oftentimes some of the most kind of talented, focused artists would immediately move after graduating, go to New York or LA or something. And all of us really loved living in Austin and wanted to stay there. So I think we made a decision to sort of bring the stuff that we wanted to see to Austin as opposed to having to go to these major centers.
So this is a picture of the outside of the building. The front white chunk with the graffiti on the bottom corner is a Pinata store, and we shared that we had the backside of the building.
Which faces another Pinata store.
Right, we're the Pinata district.
We now move 3 blocks down near 2 other Pinata stores.
Right. Is it Easter 35?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think it's also important. We did the entire build out of this space ourselves, put our own money into it, and learned a lot about construction while doing this. And I think in a sense that was sort of our first collaborative project where all of us were there after work or all 8-hour days on the weekends to build this space out. And that was kind of where a lot of us really learned a lot about each other, learned how to work together, learned a lot about strength and weaknesses amongst the group in terms of building. And I think it was a really important time of us just learning how to work together. It was actually physically building out this space.
We were using our own money, so everyone had equal amount of investment.
So, different than, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but like most collectives, there's sort of a manifesto, or there's a sort of common ground in terms of aesthetics or politics or conceptually, and we come from very vast backgrounds: animation, illustration, film, sculpture, painting, performance, and we really didn't get together to start a collective. We got together to help pay rent on this space and bring artists to town. So the genesis of our collaborative efforts was sort of happenstance and came as a byproduct of running this sort of failing business of an art gallery. We spent all this time together, and time, money, and it brought us together.
That last picture, there's our first solo show of the first curated show we did. This gentleman, Jason Villegas. Here we are finishing out the space and also simultaneously installing our first show at the same time.
Well, he's in there painting the walls.
He's in there, yeah, painting over the fresh new walls that he just finished painting white.
And our goal at the gallery was to make it a place that wasn't concerned with finances for artists, and was a place that we would love to sell work for you, but our goal is really to give you an opportunity to work without those constraints, and we function more as a nonprofit, letting people make projects that they wouldn't have been able to make without the help of 7 or 8 guys over a short period of time. And we sold work along the way, but that was never our strong suit or real drive. It was to just make good shows for Austin.
We called it a no profit.
Yeah, it was a no profit. It's not non-profit, it's just no profit.
No profit.
So kind of out of this, and so here's kind of where we shift to making work together. This is around 2008. We met every Wednesday night during gallery hours and made these little sketches and joked around. Our main sort of, I guess, common bond is humor. If there had to be one, we'd make each other laugh all day and joke around. So we had to be at the gallery every Wednesday night, and so, or every Wednesday night, and we'd make these drawings together. And we decided that for a studio tour weekend that focuses on spaces on our side of town, we would show our work at the gallery for the first time and try and let people know, who's behind OK Mountain and what they make personally. And we made these little collaborative drawings that were 10 of them started. You started 10. Everyone started 10. We brought them down to the gallery, laid them out on the floor, and you took home 6 or 7 and finished them. And it was the first time we really worked together and took ourselves out of a normal comfort zone of what I might do to solve a visual problem, or if I was handed something with paint on it and I'm usually just graphite, how do I marry these 2 images? And the size was identical. They were 7 by 7 inches, and 2 people worked on them. So there's a system that we set up for.
And it wasn't in the same space. This is still us, our personal studio practices, like taking these things and going away from the group to where we're comfortable in our little studio, make these things and bring them back.
So there's something really, really exciting about when we all met up and we walk away with a stack of half-finished drawings. And you're just like, what's going to be in here? What am I going to do with these?
So you started to see people's different approaches. Somebody may have been a really tight illustrator working with someone that makes more gestural painting, and how to marry those 2 styles together in one drawing. And we had these priced at $25 and sold every single one of them, and realized that this might be a way for us to help pay rent. Up until that point, we had always just written checks to the gallery. We wrote $100 checks every month for 4 years, probably.
I think one of our things when we came together to do OK Mountain was that we wanted to, even though we're all artists, we wanted to keep our work kind of separate from like what we did as a gallery, and have there be this kind of I guess more of a we wanted it to be taken seriously as a curated space where it wasn't just something that we were doing as a purely opportunistic thing to get our own work shown. However, there is like a annual art tour that takes place in Austin, where there's a bunch of studios and craftsmen and stuff like that open up their studios for a tour, and there are a bunch of different stops along the way, and people ride their bikes around the east side town the whole weekend. And we decided to put our work in the gallery that first year we opened, and part of the idea was to sell those drawings and make a little bit of money for the gallery itself and for our operating cost. And that was a really fun way to try and do that, because we could sell these $30 drawings during that tour, so where there was a huge influx of people that we didn't normally have coming through our doors.
So from that sort of collaboration, and then the director of a sort of basically UT's student gallery, knowing about us as individual artists, her name's Jade Walker. This is the Creative Research Laboratory, usually reserved for alumni, students, faculty. Invited OK Mountain staff to put a show together in the Creative Research Lab, and probably 4 or 5 of us went to UT, but we're from other places as well. And so that she kind of took a risk and had to sell it to her board that it would be a worthwhile thing to do. And so these are images of our first exhibition.
I mean, I think also that she encouraged, I don't know if we had talked about doing the show before she had suggested it.
I think she suggested it.
She did.
That was the
Like
first.
you guys want, I want to do a show, you guys make projects, not as artists or whatever.
Yep.
And I don't even know if it occurred to us that that was even a possibility.
No, not beyond these little tiny drawings.
Go back one though. So, and most of the work in this show, I think, was about the idea of collaboration. Like the video Heavy Lifting you can see on the left was just literally shot after shot of us, group lifting up
Heavy stuff.
heavy stuff.
We're not being able to lift
Like
it.
a motorcycle and stuff like that.
We're
And
failing to lift up something.
the big pyramid in the center was all the beers we drank together. And those were just flattened out, Lone Star cans.
But it was thinking about like really what we've been able to do as a gallery was something none of us could do by ourselves. And so I think the video really puts it into place somewhat best, and that it's just 9 people doing something one person could never do, just in terms of work. And it was very much a video just about work.
Yeah.
So this was our first show. We slept in the gallery and just spent a ton of time working on all this stuff and set these drawing games up. So you see 3 sort of clusters of drawings, and then of course the piñata totem representing each person. And the drawings were a series of games with similar rules to the 7x7s, and that everyone devised a game that everyone else had to play by. The drawings right here are 7x7 inches, but you had to draw another OK Mountain member as a cartoon character from the 80s. These were going over to Nathan's house, making one drawing in black and white, one drawing in color. These were drawings based on MySpace questionnaires. So it was a way for us to kind of put these, make these projects happen with a system and put them in a box to digest for us.
And I'd say that this is kind of an important step for us, just in the sense of it's one person that's coming up with this thing and sort of challenging the other members of the group to participate with them, which seems like it's a current theme throughout our entire body of work.
But in some ways, I think stuff was still very fragmented at this point, visually as a language, conceptually in terms of the range of approaches and what we were interested in. It varied fairly wildly. And
So the next thing, I believe the very next thing we did a show in Kansas City that was kind of like a remix of the show at the CRL, which was called It's Gonna Be Everything. The show in Kansas City was called It's Gonna Be Everything. And we remade some of the projects and did a huge mural there. And first time we went out of state to do an exhibition. And then following that, we were offered a show in Miami Beach during the art fairs by a nonprofit in Austin that wanted to fund and commission a project from us. And this would prove to be sort of the project that we really invested a ridiculous amount of time in, and the return was somewhat the same. We're still, I think, running off of somewhat of the success of that project. And we decided to make a convenience store in the art fair booth, thinking about the ideas of commerce that come with the art fair, and then also, that the relationship when you walk into a crowded convenience store is not dissimilar from when you walk into a booth. At the art fair, you face the dealer, and they're surrounded by, a Warhol and a Rauschenberg, but they're hung 8 inches apart because they're trying to fill their booth with inventory. So we looked at these really crowded, cramped gas stations and thought that's what we would be doing.
which, I mean, these play a big part of our practice.
Yeah, we have our studio's next door to a convenience store, so we modeled a lot after that.
And walking around taking a ton of photographs in sort of all the neighboring convenience stores and getting kicked out. You're just like, oh, it's research. We're doing research here.
But we didn't have a studio at the time, so this is my garage. That's another shot of my studio at home. And we had this project in about 5 locations. The booth in Miami was 16 feet deep and 15 feet 9 inches wide. So we built everything exactly to spec in hundreds and hundreds of pieces. 60 boxes worth of stuff and then these large sculptural elements, and drove it out to Miami in December of 2009, hoping that the wall would be exactly where they said it was. And of course it wasn't. It was 2 feet too short. And we told them, you know, you guys need to move the wall, and they looked at us like we were idiots. And then we started this, unloading an entire store out of the back of our truck. Put a floor in, put a drop ceiling in. This is the facade going up. And they said, okay, we'll move your wall. You guys obviously have planned for this way more than we have. This is what it looked like finished. So you can see over here to the right, there, that's another dealer's booth, and he has 5 paintings in it. And then we had floor to ceiling, completely immersive sound, video, incense, music, everything.
We recorded an entire hip hop album. Everyone did a track. We had it mixed and everything.
So that was playing in the convenience store.
So here's an interior shot. All the signs are, you know, on canvas or on paper, but they're hand painted. So everything that you can normally buy in a convenience store was for sale at the art fair, cash and carry. So all the products on the shelves, the hats, the lottery tickets, the condoms, everything was, the phone cards, all was for sale at less than $100. So you could buy a sculptural object from a member of the collective. Maybe it's like a bag of crushed Cheetos called Snuggling Crumbs, and it's $32, but you still are able to participate in that environment as opposed to being shuttled through this place where everything's $10,000, $50,000, $200,000.
There's also coupons in the newspapers we have printed.
That circular sort of functions as a catalog as well, so sort of a takeaway.
Yeah.
If people didn't want to purchase stuff, they could at least have a record of all these different objects.
But as we said earlier in the talk, people were so thrown off by this, and it was kind of a great experiment in terms of how open your eyes are when you walk through a place with this much advertising. People would walk in here and try to order a cup of espresso. We're standing in front of wooden cigarettes.
Because there's some tampon blunts over there.
And actually get angry, like come in and ask for a bottle of water.
We tell them we don't
There's
have
no
water.
bottle of water, and then ask what kind of store is this, and be like, a fake one.
Like everything is fake. The security cameras are little first aid kits made out of wood with, you know, a sewing spindle on it.
We had to stain the ceiling and
Right.
Oh yeah, we had a dance party in Austin on the floor to
the scuffle and oleum up.
get beer spilled on it and stuff.
So these are images of the corner store.
So you'll see some like big objects, and for the most part, the bigger objects like the soda machine, hot dog machine, ATM, those are sort of people teaming up together, 2 or 3 people to make this thing, and then all the smaller objects, for the most part, were made in people's individual studios. And I think over the course of a couple of weeks, you know, we'd make 10 products and bring them in. Everyone would bring 10, and so you see kind of what's working, what's not working, what, you know, what's missing, and you know, as we fill up the stuff of the shelves that are in the back of our gallery, we sort of see like what kind of texture is happening.
It was a game of like one-upping. You know, it's like when you're joking with people and everyone's trying to outdo each other. It was that. You bring in products and somebody just did something that made you cry. It was so funny, and so you go home and you try to just outdo them. And so that's kind of been consistent too. Like the piece we made here for the Crest Gallery that's brand new has a similar kind of you know, way of being created where, you know, it's a lot of jokes, and we had a Tumblr going where people could see kind of the progress, and it was about referencing something someone had just made or trying to, you know, out-crack them on something.
Yeah, there's a real spirit of one-upsmanship.
Get a Baby Drunk was a song that we were throwing around as like a possible rap song, and then we joked about it so much that Michael made a product out of it. This photo is actually featured on the cover of Art Voices magazine in New Orleans. They did a story about this project, and this was to think that Get a Baby Drunk, raspberry detergent or whatever would be on the front of a magazine.
Right.
It was not in any of our minds.
Go back. Like Grandma's Things shows up in the show.
Yeah, Grandma's
Thanks, I don't know.
Big Beer Fridays and Purple Pain beer.
Did you count how many items you made?
Yeah, we had to do an inventory because we actually started negotiating with a collection in Louisville, Kentucky during the fair that put some sculptures on hold, which completely blew our minds again. And we went on back and forth with them for almost 8-9 months, and eventually sold them the entire installation. So
Which
we
was-
had to do inventory.
Yeah, which was interesting because this is cash and carry. The fair was over the course of 4 days, so we literally had to go to work. We'd wear vests, and like some people would get off and get to go to the beach or see the other art fairs. Some people would have to be stuck behind the counter trying to sell our wares. But we,
You have to keep replenishing the wares too?
We brought
you
some
know,
over.
the whole deal was it was kind of performing in front of people. So by the end of it, a lot of things were on sale, and there was a lot had been sold. But when it was sold to the collection, there was a replenishing to get it back to its original kind of.
And we were having to reconfigure the store during the course of the weekend because if a couple bigger boxes sold, we didn't have more, we would just sort of spread out the toilet paper or just sort of reconfigure things just to keep it looking as full as possible.
I think those are the kinds of things that actually do happen.
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
it started imitating
Yeah,
real
it's
life.
like really mimetic.
Yeah, one of the linoleum tiles peeled up, and we just put duct tape on it.
That's what it did too.
So that was a big project for us, and we really, that's an example of taking everybody's bits and pieces, cramming them into one work, but you can still see Michael made that, Josh made that, Pete made that, and you know, even if, not necessarily you guys, but at least within the group, we knew all these individual hands were functioning inside this installation. And some of the works that we've made that are here at the Crest are kind of the opposite of that, where we spend all that time thinking about the object and together, and everyone's contributing ideas at that phase, and then we set on a piece and we just go to work making it. And it's not about combining stuff in the making, it's combining stuff in the conception. So you'll see that, you know, and that was a conscious decision to try to change things up. This is the sketches for a commission mural at Vanderbilt, working with our old sculpture teacher Mel, had invited us out to do something in their cafeteria, and we decided that we wanted to do a food fight mural and take the poses from art history, and Pete laid out this kind of schematic, and then the numbers were assigned to people. The left side was healthy, the right side was fast food, and we went through and drew everything to fill the mural. So this is another way that we've collaborated, you know. Everyone made drawings and 4 or 5 executed. These are images of students helping us paint. We did this mural in about 4 days. It's about 40 feet by 7 feet. Ryan painting.
Yeah, and I'll say that this project was conceived on the drive back after doing the corner store. So we'd been around each other for several weeks leading up to the show, then been around each other in Miami, and then after a while, all these brains together talking, and we were able to kind of boil down the essence of what we were going to do. By the time that we got back in Austin, we could start planning
We
this
actually
new
did
one.
that here on this visit somewhat, boiling down the ideas for our Mark Moore solo show.
Like, it's rare that we get 8 of us together. Maybe it happens once or twice a year.
These opportunities are extremely important.
We normally use email and Google blogs and, you know, Skype and things, and it takes a long time to kind of nail down an idea. Like Josh said, we kind of talked for a few hours this week, and then we're able to kind of put our foot onto something that we think we'll probably end up using. Napoleon is a hot dog on a sausage. And we've done murals in the past, like I said, in Kansas City, and oftentimes they would go up, and then the exhibition was over, and they'd be sanded and painted. And we always thought that it was worth doing to just take the space over. And but this one's permanent, so it's kind of nice that it gets to stay. Hopefully, kids don't write graffiti on it. I think they liked it. Around that time, we moved from our gallery building. We had a gallery, and this was our studio space. And we rented this building to about 12 different artists, knowing that at some point our gallery would get sold. This neighborhood's gentrifying, and our landlord put it on the market, and it really scared us that we might not have a place to exhibit. So we rented this building in 2007 and didn't get kicked out for like 4 years. And so it just served as a studio complex, which there's not a lot of in Austin. And so we've been renting this out to different people. But in 2010, the collective work was becoming much more of a focus, and curating was kind of falling off. We weren't doing as good as shows, and so we moved all of our stuff to this space. This is the back of that studio, making work in the summer of 2010 when it was very, very, very hot. For this project, this is in a 14 by 14 foot office building, or office inside the space, and we wanted to make a custom barbecue, tailgating, party vehicle that would just sort of push the limits of customization to the point of exploding. And this was for a project in Freight and Volume Gallery in New York, who met us at Pulse with the corner store. So we built this crazy contraption in our studio, and it came apart again in hundreds of pieces. We also made paintings, but we didn't have space in our studio, so we had to make the paintings when the gallery wasn't open on top of a show, which the artist was fine with, and it was great for us. And this is an image of that piece finished in New York. We brought a cedar fence up with us, and there's video, there was sound, lawn games, a toilet, grill, basketball games, all kinds of stuff, and then these two puke paintings that were created similar to the murals where everyone made drawings of items and they were collaged together, sort of showing what might happen if you partied like this with this thing.
Yeah, and I think with the corner store as well as this, we were really interested in sort of reflecting our region, sort of. So with the corner store, for the most part, it felt like a southern convenience store that's independently owned. And for this, I think, you know, UT football is in Austin, and it's huge, and tailgating culture is huge, and lowrider culture is huge. And I think we were all sort of infatuated with the idea of sort of taking our combination of all these interesting things that are happening in our region and sticking them right in the middle of Manhattan in the summertime.
And knowing this was, we got offered this during the summer, so New York's a bit sleepy, and we knew there's going to be a lot of group shows, and we just wanted to make this bombastic, loud, crazy thing that basically presented one gigantic sculpture and two large paintings, where most of Chelsea was full of drawings and you know, bee-works by people.
And this is also working in the same way that the corner store, as far as people making a ton of smaller projects and sort of plugging them into this bigger structure.
So this was called Benefit Plate, the installation. And immediately, I'd say the day we got back, we started work on a video project that would become Water Everywhere, so let's all have a drink, which is here at Crest. And this is the same studio, but we turned it into a magnificent production studio with a high-quality green screen and lighting. And this is how that project turned out. We won't talk a whole lot about it because it's here, but similar to Corner Store, everyone worked on hundreds and hundreds of clips and combined them together into one final edit to simulate kind of the effect of watching daytime TV and having the channels changed on you maybe every 2 seconds, every 20 seconds. And we try to cover all the bases of kind of the visual bases that you see on TV, the infomercial, the sports show, the commercial. So it's Corner Store sort of boiled down into one projection in a way. Everything got used. So you'll be able to see that next door. This is our studio space in the front. We did a renovation there. Afterwards, we needed more space. And like I said, we moved out of our gallery, so we wanted to open up a place where we could make work and show work. Our intern, Matt Munson, on the ladder there. We've had some awesome interns help us tremendously throughout our time as OK Mountain.
Yeah, mostly curious students that would just shoot an email, and it's like, yeah, you want to volunteer, we would love to have you. So we've been able to meet a lot of really cool kids over the last couple of years.
We put Matt through the ringer because he worked on the Freight and Volume piece out in the sun, and then immediately worked on the demolition of this. But they're awesome guys, and I think any of us would have done the same thing if the opportunity had been offered to us as undergrads. It just wasn't available.
I took that up.
Oh yeah, Carlos actually came to us. He interned for us for a year and a half before he became a member. So this is that studio space preparing for a show at the Blaffer Museum in Houston. A little better job of filming this time. We hired actors for the first time and made an installation here. It was called First Take OK Mountain. And it was 3 sculptures and a video. And the kind of themes running through this one were sort of group sleep, group thought, sleep
sort of cult mentality and.
Yeah, like what happens when groups of people are kind of forced to be in the same place and think the same things, and 12-step type programs, and so it was a pretty weird installation.
And it was an attempt, though, to sort of boil down the essence of certain ideas as opposed to having this excess of stuff that really takes a long time to get through. I think we were really trying to focus a couple of particular ideas into one singular object.
And yeah, correct. Individual objects is something we are like, we want something that can stand alone, but also this, I think, is the first time we also like made rules like no visible drywall screws, and we're gonna putty.
We're going to use fine birch.
We're gonna use fine birch.
No cardboard.
And we had, I think for the first time, and I think it was because we'd started to see some work sell, and it was just like the conservation nightmare of like being like, this is trash
Yeah.
that we just made, and how are we gonna make it some kind of stable form? And so we actually invested in materials and things that were archival and things that were had, I don't know, I guess the level of craft that the ideas themselves called for.
And we wanted to be able to show these projects again, which a lot of this stuff, we do this crazy installation, sleep in the gallery, and then most of it would go in the dumpster. So with
And
these
get painted
things-
over.
Or get painted over, yeah. So we wanted to be able to put these together, or have a preparator be able to put them together.
Correct.
And take them apart. Which brings us to, we're almost done here. This is the McNay Art Museum. The piece that we made for the McNay is also here, and they're a collection in a domestic space, a Spanish colonial home in San Antonio that's really large. They have an impressionist collection and a bunch of work like that, older paintings, but then they built this contemporary wing, and this is the first contemporary show in the wing, and it's called New Image Sculpture, and it went up in February of 11, I believe, 2011.
Yep.
About 12 artists and 2 collaboratives, one of which was us, and invited under the premise that everyone was making work kind of about everyday life and everyday objects, but maybe out of non-traditional materials. So he was really after a corner store, wanted to exhibit it, and we declined and felt like it was made for the art fair where people could buy things in that context, and we'd rather make a new piece. So this is visiting the McNay. And the idea we settled on was to make a torture gym, which called that Spanish colonial style and brought it from the architecture of the location into the contemporary wing. So these are some drawings mashing up the ideas of exercise and torture.
Contemporary
and
Nautilus and Spanish Inquisition era torture machines. And I want to say real briefly that a lot of our projects, there is a jumping off point that sometimes has a lot to do with the environment. Like for the Vanderbilt food fight mural, it's like the cafeteria. It was a famous battle. The Battle of Nashville was there for this. Walking around, seeing the Spanish colonial architecture and sort of getting the ball rolling as far as that goes. So we, for the most part, there's a level of sensitivity as to where the thing is going and why it would make specific sense there.
This is pretty close to what we decided on for this thing, but we had a hard time, even though this is a great drawing Ryan made, sort of deciding how to even start building such a thing. So we made this thing out of pink foam that we could all walk around and point at, and that was how the torture gym started. And this is Nathan. Our studio is usually very hot, Austin's warm climate. We don't have heat there. And so this time when building, it was during the winter, and it was 20 degrees and freezing and awful in our studio with no heat. But starting to build this Nautilus.
And I'll also say that this was built out of 2x4s that were, I guess a larger institution hired us to build these big walls, and at the end of the exhibition, they were like, all right, take this up to the dumpster, and we were just like, oh yeah, sure. Drove it straight to our studio.
Which has happened about 4 times,
Absolutely.
including the giant bucket of screws that we've meticulously taken out of more notable institutions to stock our.
We don't throw away drywall screws unless they're completely bent. This is the back of our studio where we were texturing the wood, and we mentioned this earlier, so we'll do it again because I think we all think it's funny, but we invented a process called johning, which is short for long johning, which is short for long john silvering a piece of wood. making it look like it was in a Long John Silver's. So abusing grinders, abusing sawzalls, and belt sanders in a way to distress this wood that's just your stock pine 2x4, and give it the appearance of a piece of medieval torture equipment. So this is shots from the McNay, and this piece is here at the Cress also. I think Pete mentioned this earlier. This is probably the first piece that we are able to put together, have put together now 3 or 4 times, and every time it's the same. And we had the correct amount of bolts, and we saved the rope, and we've driven these rocks, which are hundreds of pounds, all the way from here to Los Angeles, and Los Angeles back to Chattanooga.
And we showed this in LA on this parking deck beneath the Staples Center at a Pulse Cement in LA. And we had a ton of sand delivered and dumped on the ground, and so it looked like it was at Venice Beach, like Muscle Beach sand installation.
Yeah, and also functioned as a pedestal.
Right. That's an image of it also at the McNay. I believe that's probably, there's the bike. So that's it. So I guess we're happy to try to answer questions, or if we're ready just to go see some work, it's up to you guys. Does anyone have them?
I got a quick question. As working as a group, I know like artists with having studio assistants is kind of a big thing now, like Julie Murray too, or Jeff Koons or whatever, they got tomes of these assistants. Like, how is working as a collective that's pretty much egalitarian, how has that changed your individual studio practice, or is it, I guess that's it. How has working as a collective changed your studio practice individually?
That's a great question. I personally can say that for the most part, my interests are painting and sculpture, really hands-on stuff, and so having to experiment, making a rap song, making videos, building things properly, like I think that for a while it was sort of a separate thing of what I do, and I realized as I get a little older that all these skills that I'm acquiring through the collective are going back into my work, which for a while I just thought the things that I know are going into the collective. So there's like this give and take, and I also think that it's made me crystallize personally with my views and what I want to be doing when the time is all mine versus how I can play a role in OK Mountain.
And also just learning how to use different materials and build different things that I don't think that, in a lot of cases, we might have done otherwise. And I certainly wouldn't have learned how to build walls and tape and float drywall nearly as often.
I wouldn't have learned how to execute the drop shadow so well in Photoshop.
But yeah, I feel like almost across the board it's just informed our personal work and just given us a broader sense of what art can even be. I don't think any of us in our personal practice would have built this sculpture, but knowing that we can, that's art. I think it's just given us a broader sense of sort of not necessarily what we're allowed to do with our own work, but just
What's possible.
Yeah, but almost in the sense of what you would use assistants for, I think it's also given, like, I've definitely done several projects in my personal work that, just needed help I couldn't do in the installation process by myself, and, it's like free assistants that, the dudes have to come help, but or an afternoon or whatever. And there's also several collaborations, there's been a band kind of within the group, and various commercial and video projects and stuff like that have directly come from the fact that we've already had this working relationship, in some ways very efficient working relationship, that can naturally segue into other projects, personal or commercial or whatever.
Yeah, and I'll also say one thing, with the 7x7 at the very beginning of it, that was us doing our thing that we usually do and making that mesh with somebody else. And I think over the course of the last couple of years, we've gotten closer and closer to removing our exact kind of personal hand or personal stamp or something. And with that comes sort of the release of the ego, to where it's about this thing that's bigger than you as opposed to your idea of working.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very freeing, I think.
It's made me, in my personal practice, just want to collaborate with other people as well, outside of this group. In Chicago, I collaborate with performance artists on a regular basis, writing and making performances and so on. So just kind of opened up that idea that that's a way to function.
Anybody else?
I think this is possibly the first time you have shown, like, we have 4 works in the gallery, that aren't related, in a strict sense, a literal sense. Is this the first time that you've done that, shown 4 pieces? It's almost like a survey of the last few years?
Yeah, it was. Which is weird to see these things in the same room. The wheel that's also here is much like the torture thing in that we decide on an idea and then set about to make it. It doesn't look like any one particular person made it, and even more so there because it's much cleaner. But seeing those 2 works that kind of have a similar inception in the same room is really crazy.
In contrast to the video and the brochures, which I think have a
Right.
similarity.
Right.
It's
Those
like
2 works are
representative
more
of
like.
both of our
Two
process in general.
The
Yeah.
pastiche
Sure.
process.
Yeah, yeah.
that we-
But I also think, and we, I think, are aware of what the similarities of our interests are that have funneled through the works. But I think at a slide lecture, sometimes it's unclear like how these works relate to each other. But to me, like when you look at the brochure rack and then see the video, or any one of them, that you see, like, at least I start to see, like, this, what relates these works, having them basically dialogue in a space.
I would say like seeing them together, I think for all of us, because we're talking about our next project, and we're all here together, so we're trying to figure out what we're gonna do then. And seeing all those things together, I think in what we were talking about this morning, this idea, sort of brings together the best of both of all of this stuff, like talking about, having these objects that are very, I don't know, not austere, but,
Pared down.
self-contained. Yeah, and then also bringing in all this sort of like eclectic nature of these other things, sort of maybe trying to make something holistic that involves all those things. And I think that's because we saw all this stuff in the same place.
One of the pieces you made here, is that right?
We made 4 here, but it had never existed. It came in parts from all across the country, and so until what was it, last Saturday, it was pieces. So like the framework was built in LA by Justin, and we kind of blueprinted it probably in Austin or maybe even on the road sometime, and in Louisville, I think.
Yeah.
And then everybody designed these elements in Cambridge, LA, Chicago, and then it was printed here, the parts of it.
Which just kind of speaks to the way, 5 of us are in Texas, 4 are elsewhere, and it's become more difficult to just all get in the same room and sand something. That just doesn't work, and so we get together when we can like this, but oftentimes we're having to work through that distance, and this print project, more or less, was a way to kind of still make a new piece that we're so excited about, but not have to be in the same place physically.
And I think every one of us have talked about, or some way that it's maybe the first project that was exactly how we designed it, like in a way that I think everybody's been satisfied with, but still each person got off separate planes, and the people there are like, you gotta see the new project, like nobody had seen it, like not a single person had seen it until we got here. And then so each one of us would get to show the next guy off the plane, like, check it out, this is the piece we're gonna make. And,
The baby's like Merry Christmas. So much for her child.
There's a question.
Yeah, actually, in the last couple of weeks, there was a very interesting article in the New Yorker summarizing creative thinking in groups, and your technique kind of reminded me of that. Back in the 50s, there was a guru, I can't remember his name now, that the idea of getting together and tossing ideas around, and it also gave an example of Steve Jobs' attention to detail. He designed a building where people had to see each other during the day. Put the cafeteria in the Johns. He eventually had to have other restrooms, but he wanted everybody to go by and see each other every day in different parts of the company to create kind of a synergy, kind of creativity that you guys are talking about. However, in the article, I'll have to paraphrase it, it's hard to measure creativity, but it's the groups where they actually criticize each other. They actually get in debates and arguments turned out to be more creative than the ones where everybody kind of tossed the ideas out and had a
We've got that nailed.
debate.
Yeah, so you could have written the article. Could you just talk about that, about how you interact? Do you really argue
Yes.
a lot?
Yeah, we're all have very.
But it's gotten better at it.
Yeah, we were managing our anger.
It's not like a rock band, though.
No, for one of the works that's in the show right now, we kind of knew what we were thinking about, but it hadn't really manifested itself yet into a cohesive idea, and it really took I guess 8 of us in the same room for almost 4 days, just arguing, making drawings, trying to explain your vision versus that vision and why this is that. And, you know, at the end of the 4-day period, we all got to a place where we're happy with it, no one hates it, and I think it's incorporated sort of the strengths of everyone's individual ideas. It just takes a long time sometimes.
Sure, I mean, including conversations where it's like, I can't live with that. Like,
Yeah,
I'm
might
not
have
signing
a-
off on that.
a
Like,
veto
just putting their foot down.
Veto.
And then like little,
Does everybody have veto power?
I guess.
Well, I mean, I don't think we've made anything, I think we have to be, it has to be a group consensus or it's not gonna get built. So if someone absolutely puts their foot down, we have to work around it and figure out.
We'll table it and come back a year later and maybe things have changed.
And there's always times when people, not everybody's at the same level of enthusiasm, but generally as the process moves along, you know, enthusiasm tends to rise, no matter where you were in the beginning.
But that's been part of the refining of the ideas too. It's like, well, what do you like about this idea? And like with that project, with the wheel project, I think there was things that like, it seemed like everybody was on board with like part of this idea and someone was like, no, this doesn't work. But it was really, it was just some like, you know, ancillary part of the idea that was just like, I just don't like it being a vertical form. And like everything else is like, well, what if we did it sideways? Then it's like, yeah, okay, that's cool. And it's like, well, we just spent a day like arguing about like the dimensions and the physical presence of the human scale and all this stuff. And it's like, no, I just don't like it, you know, upright. It doesn't look cool.
But I also don't think there's any other way to get to where, to get to a complete piece. I mean, we all have to feel passionate about it, and we all have to sort of work every aspect of the pieces out. And, you know, it's really the only way that we can get to a point where we can make it work, is to sort of, you know, have these healthy and sometimes unhealthy arguments, but, and just, you know, work those problems out. And it is a lot of problem solving before we even, you know, sink one screw into a piece of wood.
And I think because we hang out so much and laugh so much, it's, you know, we're friends, and it's not just simply about like going to work and doing some crap with the employees you hate and like coworkers you hate. It's like we enjoy each other's company, and
it's a choice.
The work's lighthearted in a lot of respects, and so that keeps it fairly easy. Even if we get serious for moments, the undercurrent's always, you know, chuckle and stuff. So.
Drink a lot of beer too if you're building pyramids.
Lots.
Here, here.
Lots.